Okay, hello everybody. My name is Catherine Barrett and I'm the director and founder of Celebrate Ageing. Celebrate Ageing is a charity combating ageism and building respect for older people for the past decade. I'd like to acknowledge that I am on the lands of the Wurundjeri people. I'd like to acknowledge their elders past and present. We're really thrilled to be with you today. We've got people from all around the country, and we also have people who have come in from New Zealand and a couple of overseas destinations as well too, which is really exciting. What we're going to be doing today is launching the Old is Beautiful campaign kit against ageism. And we're going to share with you a bit about the history of that and why this focus on the word beautiful or this term beautiful and what the value of that is. And then we'll share with you our insights into what it was that we did for the project, for the pilots, and then we'll launch and tell you a bit more about the campaign kit. But before we do that and before I share that information with you, what I would like to do is acknowledge our project partners, and that's Deborah Nicol, who is the CEO of Elder Rights Advocacy in Victoria. So it's the peak organisation for aged care advocacy in Victoria, and we were thrilled to have Elder Rights Advocacy come on board as partners in the campaign, and we couldn't have done it without them. So Deborah's going to say a few words about the involvement of Elder Rights Advocacy. Thanks, Deborah.
Thank you, Catherine. I hope you can hear me and you can't see me.
We can't see you. I'm not sure why, but we can hear you. That's great.
No, look, it's probably not a bad thing if you can't see me, but it's a little bit, yes, not what I am used to with Zoom. Nonetheless, we will forge ahead. But thank you very much, Catherine, and hello to everyone. It is my pleasure to join you all today. As Catherine says, my name is Deborah Nicol, and I'm the CEO at Elder Rights Advocacy. Big thank you first up to the Celebrate Ageing team for the opportunity to be part of the Old is Beautiful pilot. I know that the advocates from Elder Rights who participated in the pilot workshops thoroughly enjoyed the experience and gained a great deal of both personal and professional insight. I would like to share some information about Elder Rights Advocacy and the services that we provide firstly. So Elder Rights Advocacy, or ERA, has been serving older Victorians for over 30 years. We were founded by older people, for older people, and still exist to ensure that the voice of older people is heard regarding matters that affect their lives. We deliver the National Aged Care Advocacy Program in Victoria and are founding members of the Older Persons Advocacy Network, or OPAN. ERA promotes and supports the aged care rights of older people through the provision of information, direct advocacy support, and of course education to aged care providers, community groups, local government, health services, and indeed anyone who will listen. Our services are free, confidential, and independent. Our programs are funded by the Commonwealth Government. However, we work for a board which is comprised of volunteer members who have an interest in social justice, human rights, and who have the skills required, of course, for effective governance. So we work for them, not for the Commonwealth Government. We're now also delivering the Aged Care Volunteer Visitors Scheme, or ACVIS, in all regional areas across Victoria, including Metro. We're not the only provider of this program in Victoria, but we are now providing it across the entire state. This program matches volunteers with an older person who is isolated and in need of social connection and just some friendly support. Both programs play an important role in the primary prevention of elder abuse by empowering older people with information that enables them to make informed decisions, about aged care services in particular, as well as establishing links to the community and enabling meaningful connections to be made. We know that when a person feels connected and empowered, they're more likely to assert their rights and, of course, reach out to help when they need it. ERA has a team of professional, experienced advocates and volunteer coordinators living and working in communities across the state. And this ensures that we're accessible, that we understand local issues and concerns, and that we can provide a relevant service in a timely manner in a way that best suits the older person. And this model was developed as a response to a service model review when older people told us that they wanted advocates to be close by. They wanted to have that face-to-face connection. Of course, post-COVID, that's become more popular. And so this is why we've located ourselves across the state. Some examples of the types of issues that we advocate for, of course, this won't surprise anybody, the quality of food that's served in residential aged care homes, for example, including the older person in their aged care planning process. Or I'm always amazed at how many older people aren't even aware that they have a care plan, either for residential care or for home care. So it's pretty important that they are included in that planning process and that their rights are respected, and that their choices and preferences are considered. Aged care fees and charges is another big issue that we help people with, and we have dedicated financial advocates who are specialists in this area. We also, of course, deal with a lot of issues that relate to potential financial abuse concerns. Communication issues between providers and the older person or their representatives, that is another big issue that we hear about daily. So we always advocate for the perceived interests of the older person and act with their permission and at their direction as much as is possible, and when required, with assistance. So that assisted decision-making process is very important. So elder rights advocacy is a very proud partner of the Old is Beautiful pilot. The partnership provided us with an innovative opportunity to have conversations with marginalised groups of older people about elder abuse, aged care rights, and our services, including, as I mentioned, volunteer opportunities. And we have many volunteers who work within the Aged Care Volunteer Visitors Scheme, who themselves are older and wanting to still contribute to the community. As a result of our participation in the Old is Beautiful pilot and the information sharing, that we had many attendees reach out to us for more detailed information and help with their aged care concerns, either for themselves or for partners, friends, or for family members. The Old is Beautiful campaign kit that has been developed from the pilot workshops is, we believe, a useful addition to the suite of tools required for the primary prevention of elder abuse. This project is novel, it engages interest and generates important conversations about the ageist assumptions that beauty fades with age and we're therefore of less value. We definitely need to push back against discourses of beauty as limited to youth. These cultural beliefs disempower and devalue older people and reinforce the disrespect for older people as a cultural norm. We believe the project can help shift ageist cultures through these beautiful images of older people and their messages about what beautiful means to them. They remind us that old is good and beautiful is more than just a physical aesthetic. Older people who internalise ageism, including the ageist belief that they are less value just because they are old, can reduce their life expectancy by 7.5 years. Quite a shocking figure. So we hope that the campaign kit will be taken up far and wide, and that workshop facilitators will reach out to us or the OPAN member in their state or territory to participate. Our contact line is 1800 700 600, and it operates between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Monday to Friday. It doesn't matter where you live. So regardless of where you live, this number will connect you with an OPAN member who can provide assistance. If you were to call that number outside business hours, it would go to a call centre, but importantly, someone would pick up the phone and would be able to provide assistance or take your details. So I would like to challenge you all to go to the project webpage, view the images, read the messages, and to not feel inspired. It was very inspirational for me, and I had to look at it with my 7-year-old granddaughter, who was also very impressed and said things like, "Oh, I'd like a hat like that. Oh, I'd like to look like that." So we want to keep that across all ages. It doesn't matter how old you are. If a child can appreciate an older person, we can all appreciate an older person. So thank you very much, Catherine, and I'm so sorry that you couldn't see me today. If you were able to see me, you'll see that I indeed am also an older person. So I have very personal interest in this pilot as well. So thanks again, Catherine, and wonderful work.
Thank you. Thanks, Deborah. And my apologies, everyone, again, for the technology not doing what we wanted it to do. What I'd like to do now is share with you a PowerPoint presentation so that we can share some of the beautiful images that came out of the project, but also tell you about the background, the activities we did. So hopefully you can all see that. So just to, as we've acknowledged Deb and the team at Elder Rights Advocacy, but also too, we would like to acknowledge the pilot sites as well too, and that was Maroondah City Council, U3A in Hepburn, the City of Brimbank, and we're really looking forward to next month working with the City of Yarra as well. So what I want to do is just a little bit of background on the project and why looking particularly at the fashion and beauty industry. And this concept that we've come up with that old is good. And I think the problem with ageism is that what we're really saying is that old is bad. And we know that ageism is so incredibly pervasive and so deeply entrenched in our culture that it often doesn't get called out. And so it can really slowly erode a person's self-confidence or self-esteem. And we do know, as Deb said, that the literature is showing that that people who internalised ageism on average reduced their life expectancy by 7.5 years. And we know that the data from the US shows us that for every $7 that is spent on health services, $1 can be attributed to ageism. So the cost of ageism is really significant in terms of the impact on health and well-being, but also to the cost to the economy. And the US data is saying 68 billion a year is the cost of ageism, and in terms of workplace discrimination, it's actually something like 800 billion dollars. So the cost is enormous, and one of the challenges is that we don't see it. And so what we wanted to do was something that would help to gather people's attention and to bring this problem into focus. And this project won't knock ageism on its head in its entirety, but it's one strategy in a toolkit that we need. So just in terms of where it came from, the origins of it. So youthfulness is a beauty goal. So the fashion and beauty industry, there's a real issue with ageism. in the fashion and beauty industry. And we actually see, some of you may be aware that every year in the US, cosmetic surgeons gather to declare the most beautiful woman in the world. And last year it was Bella Hadid, and she's a woman in her 20s. And if you look at the women, and if you look at the women who have won this award, it's mostly younger women, white Anglo-Saxon, lean. So there's a kind of a trope, if you like, a way of a priority that's given, or a declaration around the way that beauty is. And that's what we want to tackle, because younger people are considered beautiful and older people are not. And so often, if you look at representations of older women in popular culture, particularly advertising in the media, this image in the middle of the older woman with the curlers and the shotgun and the velour dressing gown is presented as somebody who's not attractive. And this is a real problem. I mean, it may look trivial, but it is a real issue, because what we're doing is positioning, I guess, young as good and old as bad. And this erodes people's sense of confidence or their sense of self-esteem. And so this last image on the right, which is join me in the battle against aging, you know, we are called on to fight our own aging. And this is corrosive stuff. This erodes people's our sense of self as we age. But it's changing, and I want to share with you some of the changes that are happening. There is this change around confident, sassy, and empowered older people. And many of you will know Iris Apfel, the woman on the left, who has just turned 102, and she has a cult following. She has over a million people on her Facebook group, and she's, you know, got her own Barbie doll and Magnum ice creams, and she has an absolute cult following. Lynn Slater is an Australian woman, and, you know, if you look at her accidental icon work, it's very much around this pitch of a confident, sassy woman who's being her own person. And then on the right, the imagery from Advanced Style in New York, which is bringing in different body shapes, bringing in, it's much more culturally diverse and inclusive of older people and queer folk. And so there's this shift that is happening around older people reclaiming the word beautiful and taking up space or claiming space in the fashion industry, and have been incredibly popular doing so, and incredibly successful in doing so. And, you know, I appreciate that not everybody is Iris Apfel or Lynn Slater, but there's a principle here that is incredibly powerful. And we saw this in Celebrate Aging's pre-COVID catwalks against ageism, where we worked with first-time models in fashion parades, where they were encouraged to think about their internalised ageism and present themselves as confident and walk down the catwalk. And something really remarkable happened when they did that. And it's the first time I've seen this in 40 plus years of working with older people. What actually happened as they walked down the catwalk is younger people of all ages, 40s, 50s and 60s, pointed to these older models and said, I want to be her, or that's us, you know, nudging their friend and going, that's us, we're going to be that person. I have not seen that anywhere else in my professional career working with older people. And we've been exploring this and what it means. And I think there's something incredibly powerful, because it's younger people identifying with older people, seeing their own aging trajectory, seeing themselves as older people, and I guess that connection being built with older people. And when we look at theories of ageism, and I'm thinking in particular terror management theory, which proposes that ageism has its foundations in our own fear of our morbidity and mortality and vulnerability. So these are things that it's proposed that in the West we don't want to deal with. And so what we do is we psychologically distance ourselves from older people. And what that does is it positions older people as other. And when older people are other, I think there is less respect, there is elder abuse, there's family violence, there is ageism. And I think one of the tools in the kit of strategies to prevent ageism is for us to really find ways of seeing older people as us, of reducing that othering and seeing older people as belonging and seeing them as us. And that's what this fashion and beauty industry work does. It's sassy and it's confident. It's not everybody, but it still is a shift, and we think it's incredibly powerful. And that's why we chose to do this work in the fashion and beauty industry. So I'm going to share with you now some slides outlining the project, and I'm going to start by looking at the activities because, and then the aims, because there was a shift. And you can see one of the images from the campaign over here on your left. But the activities, what we did for the Old is Beautiful campaign, the first stage was a workshop with older people. We repeated it 3 times, about 10 older people in each of the workshops. And what we did in those workshops was we looked at ageism and we looked at expectations of aging. So what people expect will happen to them as they age. And then we looked at the impacts of ageism. And then Deb and her team came in and talked about elder abuse support and support for rights. But then the next step that we did was talked about the word beautiful and this concept of old is beautiful, and explored what beautiful means to older people. So they were the discussions we had. And that's part of the workshop that we call hair and makeup for the soul. So it's this idea that if people go to a photo shoot, often they'll, think about, how do I want to present myself? Will I get my makeup done? Will I adjust my clothing? And we're saying, well, actually, it's that sense of self that we have that sometimes is completely projected when an image is taken. And you can see that with Irene as well here too. Irene is a singer, and she just completely projected this self-confidence that I think that we want to encourage older people to have. So there was the photo shoot at the workshops, and then what we did was we put the photographs into social media tiles, and you'll see those as we move through the slides, and we shared them on social media to try and generate interest. But I'll share with you some of the other creative dissemination strategies we had as well. So after our third workshop, we recognised that the aims of the workshop had shifted. So to start with, the aim was around combating internalised ageism. So we wanted to bring older people into this workshop to look at what ageism was, to help them see ageism, and then to help them develop strategies to protect themselves from internalising that ageism. And that feels incredibly important work to be doing, because this work on combating cultural and structural forms of ageism will surely take many years, if not decades. So that was the first aim. The second aim was around shifting community perceptions. So we wanted these images like beautiful Anne, who's 86, we wanted these images to go out on social and other forms of media to the community to raise awareness and challenge these ageist misconceptions of beauty as the prerogative of youth. But something else really quite powerful happened in the workshops. We had so many older women telling us at the workshops that they were also here because they wanted to be role models to their granddaughters. And they talked about having granddaughters who were in their 20s and gorgeous and did not feel confident in their bodies. And so they were saying, when does this stop? When do we stop critiquing ourselves against the cosmetic surgeons' versions of beautiful? And when do we start to say that we are beautiful at every age, and that beauty is not just a physical aesthetic, it's also our soul and our sense of ourselves? So we shifted the aims much more broadly. And just a word about inclusion. What we wanted to do with this project was not only broaden the definitions of the word beautiful to include older people, we also wanted to include all body shapes and sizes, all physical and cognitive abilities, all ethnicities, sexualities, and genders. And that's something that we've worked really hard to achieve. And I think it was really interesting that so many people thought because we had a project that was called Old is Beautiful that it would just be about women. But no, absolutely, it's about all genders. In terms of dissemination, what we wanted to do was something that was a little bit different to try and get the message out to a different group of people. We know that through our social media channels, we might have the converted, perhaps, or a local cohort, particularly with the councils. But what we wanted to do was really see how we could push this out, this message that old is beautiful, to a different cohort. So Suzanne Phoenix, the photographer here, had the idea to ask Placket to share some street posters around Melbourne. Unfortunately, they don't go into rural communities, but to share some posters to try and attract a different audience. And let me show you some of those images. So you can see, you know, the one here down the bottom on the left in particular, you know, the posters are up there with every other poster for every other music gig. And they're on street corners and they're on corner shops. They're in train stations. And so we don't know what the impact of these are for sure. But Suzanne had this beautiful idea that she reached out through her networks and said to people, can you help us find these posters in location? So remembering there were 100 posters around the city. And so her social media page filled up with people sharing photographs of the posters in location. And that was another really interesting way of drawing people's attention to the campaign. The other thing that we did was a media release, and we sent it out to a number of publications, and it was picked up by the Senior newspaper. And for those of you that aren't aware, the Senior newspaper has 1.3 million readers. And this image, which was on the front cover of Michelle, and those words, old is beautiful, that was sitting on the top of the newspaper in over 7,000 outlets. So that felt like a really important milestone to be able to send this message to older people that old is beautiful, and for that to go out to such a broad audience was really rather wonderful. In terms of feedback, what we did was surveys, just a one-pager survey before and after the workshop. And because we knew so little initially about what impacts this workshop would have or this campaign would have, we tried to measure a number of different things. And what we found was using Kilpatrick's levels of education, we looked at relevance and knowledge. And what people said was they agreed that the workshop was relevant and that they'd learned new skills and knowledge. The other thing that we did too in terms of measuring knowledge is we asked the participants whether they had strategies to protect themselves against ageism. And before the workshops, on average, people said they somewhat agreed that they did, and afterwards they agreed that they did. So there was a little bit of a shift. And, you know, it really, what that has shown for us is that we can see where we need to do more work to make, I think, to raise consciousness of the importance of having strategies rather than more simply presenting this as a strategy. We also asked the participants in the final workshop whether they thought it was important to have strategies to protect themselves against ageism. And on average, participants said they agreed. And, you know, I think in hindsight, we would like to see a stronger response. We'd love to see people strongly agree that they need to have strategies to protect themselves. And in some of our other work, we've found in trying to understand this, that not every older person understands the need to have strategies to protect themselves, because not everybody understands how caustic and harmful ageism is. And some older people are telling us as well too that they are so overwhelmed by ageism that they shut off to it, particularly if it's coming from family and friends. And so then it becomes really difficult to engage with ageism, but that doesn't mean that people are protected. So there's something more for us to explore here. And then this data that really surprised us quite a lot. We asked people their biological and subjective age. And on average, there was a 33-year difference. Now, some of you may know the research that shows that on average, because of ageism, internalised ageism, on average, we think of ourselves as 7 years younger than we are, or about 20% younger. And so to find that there's a 33-year difference was really quite powerful. And we're going to do some more work exploring what this means. So in the final workshop, as this data emerged in the last workshop, we looked at the difference between subjective and biological age before and after, and there was a small shift. But what's really interesting is that if you look at the literature, the research is saying, if people have a lower subjective age, that's a great thing. It's equated, it's correlated with better health and well-being. But I think that's ageist as well. When you think of this concept of old is beautiful, and older people going, well, I feel so much better about myself, so therefore I feel younger. But actually, I think it's probably beyond the capacity of this or the scope of this campaign, but I think there's a real need here to think about how older people think about old as being a good thing, and if they're feeling really healthy and energetic, you can still be feeling fabulous at 86 rather than you're feeling fabulous at 86, so you need to say that you are 66. So I think there's more work needs to be done here. So in terms of the future evaluation, what we're looking at is relevance and knowledge. We know that there are positive shifts in that, and we're also going to be looking at changes in behaviour as well too. The other one that we want to do is look at shifting expectations. So those expectations of ageing that in terms of cognitive capacity, in terms of physical capacity, and in terms of mental well-being, we know that more positive expectations of ageing are associated with better health and well-being. And so in this next workshop, we would like to look at seeing if we can shift those three domains, and also to shift the expectations of beautiful as well. And finally, to come to the campaign kit. So the campaign kit is done and it's up. You can have a look at celebrateaging.com /beautiful to follow the links to that. But what the campaign kit has is everything that a facilitator would need to host an Old is Beautiful campaign in their local community. And so it's an online resource, and it has everything for recruitment from, a draft flyer that people can download and then localize, put their own logos, their own content, dates, times, location. And also similarly with the information sheet and consent form, there's a briefing for photographers. There are workshop guidelines, so there's a PowerPoint presentation. We've found it useful sometimes to have that PowerPoint presentation because it can bring a real focus in, and there are guidelines or notes for each of the PowerPoint slides as well, and that can be localized. We've got an evaluation theory and the evaluation tools again, so people can either do a pre-post or a post-workshop survey. And then we've got a whole range of tools for dissemination. So that's a media release that people can download and localize, strategies for social media, for engaging the media, and things that would be completely fabulous with this campaign would be to host a local launch and invite the local community in, or put print the photographs and put them up around local businesses. All of those strategies that could really engage the community in the project. So just the final invitation to you all. What we're doing now, if you go to, there's the web address, celebrateaging.com is our website. And if you go to the beautiful page there, you'll see there's an invitation to join our 2024 campaign for International Day of the Older Person, which is on the 1st of October. And so what we're doing is for people who want to participate in the campaign, who want to host an event in their local community or council or organisation, that you can work with us. We'll run a number of online sessions just to help people troubleshoot, but it's very simple. But just to really help people localise perhaps their evaluation tools or some of the things that not everybody feels comfortable doing. So join us for that campaign on the 1st of October. And as I said before, we have international guests here today, so we'd love to see that campaign go international.